I had a lot of interaction with Iranians from all backgrounds. And anytime I went out in the street, like every few meters, I would get into a new conversation with someone because they don't see many foreigners, especially from the United States. They would want to talk to me, and people were very open about their political perspective. They're not afraid to criticize or condemn their government. In some cases, people weren't even afraid to call for regime change.
Why don't we talk about Iran? That's
I was just going to say,
on the list.
We really roamed far afield here. All right, so you just went to Iran, and something that people are always trying to present to you is how great Iran was under the Shah. And the evidence they always give you is that the women wore miniskirts. They're very high on the fact that women wore blue jeans and miniskirts as evidence for why the autocratic regime of the Shah was actually like Switzerland for the Iranian people. Now, you were just there. What is your sense? Do the people not want that government? Do they resent that government? Do they, the suggestion of articles like that are that they want to be Western, they want to be like us, and this regime is forcing them into that? Do they support that government? Do they want that government overthrown? Do they want to be like us? Do they want to get rid of that government and not want to be like us? What was your sense of the culture there?
Yeah, I can only offer an anecdotal sense.
Sure.
There are polls by a pollster named Ibrahim Mohseni, who collaborates with the University of Maryland, but he has an office in Tehran that will give more hard details about where Iranians stand on major issues.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I got about like 20 minutes here. I had a lot of interaction with Iranians from all backgrounds. And anytime I went out in the street, like every few meters, I would get into a new conversation with someone because they don't see many foreigners, especially from the United States. They would want to talk to me, and people were very open about their political perspective. They're not afraid to criticize or condemn their government. In some cases, people weren't even afraid to call for regime change. It's a very like chaotic society. It's not as much of a police state as we're told it is. Although, you know, if you cross certain lines, you do not have the free speech protection that we have here in the United States, for sure. It's a country that's under siege. It's surrounded by U.S. military bases and business interests. It's surrounded by hostile countries. And so there is a certain understandable paranoia among the government. The friction point is not necessarily over the government. With many Iranians, it's over the system itself. It's over the Islamic Republic. Do you support the leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and the system he represents, or not? And I met Iranians, young Iranians, a number of young Iranians who were extremely critical of the government, extremely critical of the leadership being ineffectual and somewhat incompetent, but they said they support the leader and they support the Islamic Republic for various reasons. Some of them, and they tend to have more political education, be maybe more activist minded, but you know, at the top of the reasons for supporting the Islamic Republic is its foreign policy of supporting oppressed people in the region, and challenging Israel and U.S. hegemony. They are proud of that. They're proud of the independence of their country. Then you have like the warring camps, the principalists who support the Islamic Revolution and want to adhere to the original principles of freedom, independence, and Islam. And then the reformists who represent more of the urban middle-class public. And I mean, they're having it out. Their debates are as vicious as anything we see in the U.S. between Democrats and Republicans. If anything, they're fighting over much more material issues, like how to engage with the United States and the economy. They're not always fighting over cultural issues. There was the Masa Amini color revolution attempt in this is like a few years ago, and this was over a Kurdish woman who was taken into the hospital after being arrested by the morality police for improperly wearing her hijab. And medical, like the medical information, Ministry of Justice documents, Ministry of Health documents, all show that she had a condition that may have been exacerbated, but she was not beaten to death or beaten for not wearing the hijab. But the story that came out to the West was she was basically beaten into a pulp by the morality police and died in a hospital. It set off massive riots as well as protests in Iran. Over 50 police officers were killed, like members of the Basij, who are sort of student and young volunteers who want to support the Islamic Republic, were killed, stabbed in the streets by rioters. There was clear Western intelligence involvement. There was an armed insurgency on Iran's frontiers, and they held on. I think the West thought that this was going to topple the government, the so-called regime, and it failed to do so. And, so we have to look at Iran as a very resilient system. At least 20% of Iranians, according to the polls I've seen, are hardcore supporters of the Islamic Republic and will lay down their lives to defend it. And that's a lot of people. And there isn't the same intensity on the other side. And one thing I noticed that you notice immediately once you, not just when you arrive to Tehran, but when you get on a flight, like if you take a connecting flight from Istanbul, which is a place where there is no hijab mandate, is that nobody's wearing, very few women are wearing hijab getting onto the flight. One woman getting on my flight was wearing a sports bra. It was like she'd just gotten out of the gym. And then when you get there, okay, women aren't wearing mini skirts, but you like 40% of the women in the street are just not wearing their hijab, and they're facing no problems at all from any morality police. I traveled through Iran with a woman, with my wife, Anya. And so I would see it on a more intimate level, how women are, treated. And she maybe once was asked to put on her hijab going into like a hotel or some official building. I don't exactly remember what, but after like day 2, she just dropped the headscarf. And it's very clear that the government, the state, has made a decision after this Masa Amini color revolution to try to reduce the friction between the secular and religious segments of the public, and to take that card away from the West that wants to use cultural issues to incite rebellion against the government. And they've done that to the point where they've actually pushed back on popular protests, grassroots protests from pro-revolution elements, demanding that the headscarf mandate be enforced. They've told them, go home. We don't want this friction. Let us handle it. So that's something that isn't really conveyed to the American public. But if you're watching this right now, after you finish watching me because you're so transfixed by my brilliant analysis, when it's done, go on YouTube and just search like walking tour of Tehran, and you can see for yourself, or you can watch some of the walking tours I did on Twitter where I would publish like just 5 minutes of me walking around, like I walked around a like kind of resort area right below Mount Tochal, which is north of Tehran. And you'll see like almost every woman is not wearing hijab, but they have to like bring the scarf with them and have it ready. So it's still an issue. It's still an issue. And, many people told me like they're very frustrated with it. Religious people tend to support Palestine more and be more supportive of solidarity with Palestine. The middle class secular people who are not as supportive of the Islamic Revolution would tell me, why are we supporting Palestine? It's far away from us. Like it would be like talking to an American who's questioning why we're supporting Ukraine. They don't get it. And they think that Iran is wasting money that could be spent at home on supporting these allies like Hezbollah, Ansarullah in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza, the popular mobilization units in Iraq. They just don't get it. And part of the reason is they watch satellite TV, and BBC Persia is doing a very effective job at driving a wedge. And specifically targeting the part of the public that's sort of secular and on the fence and wants a more westernized country. So, and then you have like that part of the country.
Well, these people, like, I know there's a movement to install the Shah's son there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a joke. It's a complete joke. I even managed to meet a few people in the street who said they support the Shah, but it's just like not considered a credible position. And the Shah's son is considered a joke, like more than the Shah himself. He's cozied up with Netanyahu. He's too sold out to the Saudis. It's not going to be accepted.
Right.
If change comes, there's this culture below the surface in Iran of people who live a life, who are culturally very Iranian, but also influenced by the West. And how could they not be with the advent of social media? Everyone has a VPN on their phone. I had it.
Right.
It just takes 2 seconds to download, and then you're in all the social media apps that are supposedly banned, and you're seeing the West's world. And so like Burning Man type festivals have taken place in an underground capacity. Large part of the public drinks in their homes. I went to like a hippie market that takes place on every Friday, like a hipster crafts market, really cool. And on the outskirts of it, I smelled marijuana. Like,
wow. So is that like a throwback to the old hippie trail where people would go overland through there?
It wasn't like, people going to see their guru in Kathmandu in the 60s. It was like young Iranians who have probably grown marijuana, and like, it's all happening. I saw goth youth, like dressed like goths, dressed like some young people dressed like punk rock, walking down the street in Tehran, encountering no problems. I took the metro all the way through Tehran. They have a very clean subway system. Would function much better if all parts weren't sanctioned by the West. And you see young people engaged in public displays of affection, like kissing each other outside of marriage. It's just, no one was doing anything to stop them. So the more that the West leaves Iran alone and stops terrorizing Iran, the West is financially terrorizing Iranians. All of them feel it. They all have different reactions to it and blame different culprits because of political education, where they're getting it from. But the West is terrorizing Iran through sanctions, and everybody's suffering. The middle class suffers the most because they have the most to lose, and the upper class, is always going to find a way. But there's that. But when the sanctions go away, the West stops terrorizing Iran, stops trying to sponsor color revolutions, stops threatening Iranians with war. It will liberalize more. It's just going to happen naturally. And so as long as, you have the Zionist axis besieging and threatening Iran, there's always going to be, cause to justify, to justify the status quo. It's the same with Cuba and the embargo, the siege of Cuba. It's the same thing.
We're protecting you.
Well, there's always
the regime can claim we're protecting you.
Yes. The reform would have taken place naturally within the Soviet Union, but the West wanted to claim credit for victory in the Cold War and to bring down the Soviet Union. And this Ukraine proxy war is the result of that, along with so many other horrific developments like the rise of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, where the U.S. refused to make peace, to actually have a peace treaty with Gorbachev in which they would allow for some kind of, they would allow for like keeping the peace in Kabul instead of having the warlords that the CIA backed take over. It's all, the result of Western maximalism. And they want, if Iran suffered regime change, if the US brought down the government in Tehran, Iran could be balkanized, war could break out in a hideous fashion, and there would be a race to plunder Iran's assets, especially in places like Khuzestan, which was part of Saddam Hussein's original reason for launching his 8-year-long war on Iran, because it's so petroleum rich there, and there are Arabic speakers. So Iran, like, the consequences of regime change would be devastating. And that's still what the U.S.-Israeli Zionist axis is angling for. But there's been an announcement today that the Trump administration has flouted Israeli demands for 0% enrichment in Iran and is going to allow low levels of enrichment. I don't know if that's true or how it will be received in Tehran, but that could be actually a way, a path out of this nightmare if the U.S. provides sanctions relief. And after the 2015 JCPOA, and I got this from across the board in Iran, nothing really changed for Iranians. Nothing changed for Iranian businessmen. Nothing changed for the Iranian middle class, and certainly nothing for the working class. There was no real sanctions relief. Right. And so the real sanctions relief is going to have to be delivered for Iran to agree to allow themselves to basically be spied on by American inspectors and to reduce capacity of something that's their national pride, which is their nuclear program, their civilian nuclear program, which has produced, for example, radioisotopes that are used in treating 1 million Iranians who have suffered from cancer and other diseases.
Come see us live. Glasgow, Manchester, Belfast, Dublin, London, Liverpool, Birmingham. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.